If you saw my last video, welcome to part 2. However, if you're new around here, you're currently watching a 22-year-old truck driver reverse inside a ferry to then spend the next 20 hours aboard that ship, crossing from Ancona in Italy to Igoumenitsa in Greece. Once we had figured out where they wanted us to park, myself and my colleague headed upstairs to sort out our cabins. I have been on ferry crossings where I have shared a room with a male colleague. This one, however, they did split us up and put us in separate rooms. My male colleague did end up sharing with 3 other male truck drivers. He did ask if he could pay extra to have a room on his own, but the boat was just so rammed full. I wasn't sure if somebody was going to be coming into my room as well because the second bed was made up. Thankfully nobody did, and I was very fortunate to have the room to myself for the whole crossing. However, I have been on boats where I have shared with other female truck drivers or just other people in general, so it's not unusual for that to happen. Once we sorted our stuff out, we then headed up to have some dinner, which was a questionable choice, so I ended up with some soggy chips, a little bit of bread, coke and water. That cost me €7.50, I believe, with the driver's discount, so just bear that in mind for a little bit later on. Once I was back in the room, the view was lovely. It's not always guaranteed to have a window in the cabin, so again I was very fortunate, and you can tell I was tired because I thought that was somehow going to end up with a slick transition of blacking out the camera. I was feeling brave, so I thought why not immerse myself in the Italian or Greek culture and turn on the telly, but obviously I couldn't understand a thing they were saying. I couldn't change the channel either, so I thought sod it, let's just watch some Netflix instead, and I put on Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders, which is what I'm currently addicted to. I ended up having a really good night's sleep until this woke me up the next morning.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to inform you that the a la carte, as well as the self-service restaurant, will stay open for another 30 minutes. Thank you.
And as comforting as it was to hear that in English, they did play the same announcement in about 5 or 6 different languages to cater for everyone on board, so it felt like the announcements went on for hours. I went upstairs to the top deck to get some fresh air. It was incredibly windy. You may be thinking I've not shown much of the boat downstairs, and that is because there was a huge number of people doing this crossing that obviously hadn't paid for a cabin, so they end up just putting sort of sleeping mats and sleeping bags on the floors in the corridors and just spending the night and spending lots of time there, and it was just completely wrong to film people like that, especially people when they're sleeping or have not consented to being filmed at all. So that is why you are seeing a lot of clips from inside the room and a lot of clips from outside the boat, because the last thing I want to do is invade anyone's privacy. I did end up having some lunch, and remember what I said, how my dinner the previous night costed €7.50 for everything. That plate of watermelon alone costed €6.50. I'm not sure whether they put the driver's discount on, I don't know, but it's probably the most expensive plate of fruit I've ever had. They did actually have these swimming pools on board. Obviously they aren't filled up with water, I don't know if they ever are anymore, and they did have a specific shop on here. They also had like a casino and an arcade games area, so there was plenty of things to do. I did feel really sorry for that dog, and this is just a tiny snippet of how busy it was. They made us leave the rooms quite early, and then there was nowhere to sit, so we waited in that corridor for about an hour and a half, and it was just crammed full of people. Luckily we found our way back to the trucks. However, it was a really high pressure situation to get off of the ferry, as it was when we were boarding, so unfortunately I didn't get any specific clips of that. However, we did have this really lovely scenery ready to start our drive over to Athens. I'll see you all in the next video.